Coming up on KCCI 8 News Close Up, cities across the state are facing budget shortfalls. We'll break down what a bill passed a few years ago to limit property tax increase amounts means for you and what could come next. Federal layoffs are taking a toll on Iowans. The point of view from a former USDA worker and what Senator Chuck Grassley says needs to stop. A leader of a church and a former Iowa lawmaker wants to be Iowa's next governor. What Governor Kim Reynolds says her plans are for 2026 and whether she wants to stay in office.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close Up.
Good morning and welcome to KCCI 8 News Close Up. I'm Chief Political Reporter Amanda Rooker. The Iowa governor's race is more than a year away, but we now have at least one official candidate in the mix. Brad Sherman is a former Republican representative and a pastor in eastern Iowa. He announced last week he's running for Iowa governor as a Republican. And Sherman says spiritual and family values are important to him. He wants to promote those values. He says he called Governor Kim Reynolds in November to let her know about his plans.
I wanted her to know that I'm doing this primarily because I feel like God's leading me to. And it's not like I have some huge vendetta against her. I don't. I always gotten along well with her.
And Sherman told me some of the things he'd like to accomplish are stopping human trafficking, lowering property taxes, and protecting private property rights from carbon capture pipelines. A day after Sherman made his announcement, Governor Reynolds hinted at plans to run for re-election that would set the stage for a Republican primary. Now, Reynolds was asked if she's confident she would get an endorsement from President Donald Trump in a potential primary race. Sherman is a longtime Trump supporter, and Reynolds and the president have a rocky history stemming from her initial endorsement of Ron DeSantis ahead of the Iowa caucuses.
I'm running on my record. I'm going to run on what we've done for Iowans since I've been elected, and I'm proud of that record. We've gotten a lot done in a short timeline, and I'm proud of what we've been able to do.
Are you running for re-election?
Well, stay tuned. There might be some news coming, just not today.
Now, if she did run and was reelected, this would be Reynolds' third term in office. She initially took over for Governor Terry Branstad in 2017 when he was asked to serve as the U.S. ambassador to China in the first Trump administration. Well, right now, the president says he's considering a plan that would give a portion of DOGE savings back to Americans. Since taking office, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency has upended several federal agencies with mass layoffs. Trump brought up the idea last week in Miami.
So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions, and we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter.
Now, this idea of returning money to taxpayers initially came from the CEO of an investment firm, Azoria, on social media. Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley says the White House's review of government spending should not close offices, including offices related to agriculture and conservation.
The government is a service and can't be shut down. And there isn't supposed to be a single office closed as a result of it.
Now, Grassley says his office has been contacted by Iowans who were recently laid off from the federal workforce. Grassley added that the Trump administration has created an exemption for employees that are specifically focused on fighting bird flu. An Iowan who was doing USDA research at the Iowa State University says he was impacted by the latest round of Trump's layoffs.
It's just been really frustrating process for everyone involved, just not having the transparency that we really wish we would have to be able to plan for and accommodate for this decision.
Ames city leaders say they don't know how many federal workers have been laid off. Only the USDA can confirm whether certain Iowans have been reemployed. KCCI has reached out to the USDA, but we have not heard back. Still to come on Close Up, a bill could push local police to participate in federal immigration enforcement. What the fiery fight over border security at the State House could mean for Iowa law enforcement. But first, as Iowa homeowners call for lower property taxes, cities say they're already facing budget shortfalls and are bracing for more. We'll take a closer look at what that could mean for where you live. Welcome back to Close Up. Property tax reform has been a major discussion at the Iowa State House this session. Republican lawmakers have promised to lower Iowans' property taxes. They say that's something that they heard out on the campaign trail back in the November election. There is a lot to talk about, so we're here with KCCI investigative reporter Suzanne Banky, who has been looking at all angles of this. Suzanne, thanks for joining us this morning.
I'm glad to be here, Amanda.
Well, before we talk about the further property tax reform that lawmakers are considering,
Sure.
I want to look back a little bit because we know a few years ago, state lawmakers passed a separate piece of property tax reform, and now we've been kind of seeing some of the impact of that. Walk us through, what did that legislation do?
Do we have a half an hour to go through all of that?
I know.
Because there is a lot.
It's complicated.
So if anyone wants to look that up, it's House File 718, and it was passed 2 sessions ago, well, 1 session ago, but 2 years ago, and put into law. To summarize it as quickly as I can, which is a challenge, it caps how much local governments, in particular cities, can raise property taxes, and the taxes that go to the general fund, right? And that general fund is what local governments use to pay for essential services that we expect as residents. So we're talking police protection, fire protection, streets, so public works types of things, sewer systems, all of that, and then anything else that residents have deemed essential. That is how I can. That's
Great.
summarize that in a
appreciate it,
nutshell.
Suzanne. And I know you've also been talking to cities and counties who've now been setting their budgets based off of what they're now allowed to do with this piece of legislation. What are the cities and counties telling you about how this is impacting them?
To summarize that very, very quickly, cities are in that process right now and taking public input. So I would also emphasize, this is a process where citizens can go and talk to what priorities they want their local governments to have, but it's causing local governments to shift some of their priorities. I've heard from different leaders about we may have to delay updates to our playground equipment. We may have to look at instead of sending out our snow plows when there's an inch of snow on the city streets, we may have to wait until there's 3 inches. Like, they're really looking for ways to, in very tiny ways, save money because they have limits on how much growth in their budget they can have.
And I know one of the leaders that you talked with was the mayor of Indianola.
Yes.
I think we have a clip from that conversation. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
What do you cut? There's nothing to cut. Here in Indianola, what we're seeing is that hard cap is really a disincentive for growth, because right now we've got 4 different projects we're working on. It's going to bring over 500 units, residential units, into this city. Any changes that we can't capture that value of growth is going to severely inhibit our ability to provide the structural demands that's going to be part of that growth.
That conversation that you had there with the Indianola mayor. Tell us a little bit about, he's saying, we want to grow as a community, right?
Yes.
How is the property tax cap, impacting that?
So in particular, in that conversation with the mayor of Indianola, he talked about different projects, right? Different housing projects, residential development that they've been able to bring in. And what House File 718 does is it caps the amount of property taxes that they can capture from that new growth. Now, along with new growth in a city comes other essential services. Building new streets, building new utilities, having more workers to deal with more snow removal, different types of things that have to be provided. You want city services to be provided when you move into a new community, or if you're a developer wanting to develop. And what city leaders are saying, in particular, Steve Richardson, he did a good job of showing we can't capture the full growth, and it's going to be harder for us to provide the city services, the essential city services that those new residents want. Younger residents in particular, he pointed out, they want different amenities. They want the parks, they want the great public libraries, they want trails to walk on, they want things that are walkable to get to. And those are not necessarily going to fall under police protection, fire protection, and city streets all the time.
Well, Suzanne, thank you. Our conversation will continue. After the break, we will discuss the Iowans that are calling for more tax relief for lowering property taxes and what potential legislation may look like this upcoming session. Stay with us. Welcome back to Close Up. Our conversation about potential property tax reform continues with KCCI investigative reporter Suzanne Banky. Thanks for being here.
Again, happy to be here, even if we are talking about property taxes.
It's important. This is something people care about. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, right? We're hearing from cities and counties who are saying they're feeling a pinch with a property tax cap that was passed, a few years ago.
Yes.
Yet we're also hearing from Iowans who are saying my property taxes are going up and it's expensive and I want them lowered. So where is the discrepancy, that we're seeing there?
I would say there is, in the Iowans I've talked to, and maybe in conversations you've also had, I think there's a lot of confusion over what do your property taxes pay for. There's a lot. When you get that property tax bill, it doesn't necessarily, who wants to stare at that? When you get that notification, if you're a property owner, business owner, or whatever, but there are a lot of things baked in. Iowa's system for paying for local government is underpinned by property taxes by and large. So, we don't have a New York City or a Chicago or a Kansas City that's going to attract a lot more tourism. We have solid tourism going on. The state wrestling tournament's happening this week. I mean, it's packed out there, but it still isn't quite the same as having a robust tour. Like, we don't have professional sports at the level of like the Kansas City Chiefs, Chicago Bears. I mean, whatever city you're looking at. We just aren't quite that big and don't have that market in Iowa. So property taxes is where we get the funding to underpin our local government. And Iowans aren't wrong. Their tax rates have gone up a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. You can look this up. This is on the state website and other tax association groups. They are not wrong. So I know you spoke to voters who expressed this. I'm a homeowner myself. I see it too. But I just think the disconnect is in understanding what is your government trying to pay for, what do you want from your government, because lots of communities do local surveys. So they're trying to match, like a budget should be a way to look at, when you look at a city's budget or a county's government budget, you should be able to discern what their priorities are. And the Pleasant Hill mayor did a really good job of explaining that. You know, she said, go ahead, like look at our budget. You will be able to see what our priorities are for the upcoming year based on input from different stakeholders, people who live there, businesses, and their elected officials, and the different needs to be able to meet those priorities that they hear about.
Yeah, I think it would be good to bring in the context from that Pleasant Hill mayor. So let's hear from her now.
We are still having to make sure we do just tiny pieces, and really now only essential pieces. You know, we'll probably be delaying playground upgrades. We're looking at, okay, how can we spend more here, but maybe when it snows, we don't send the snow plows out at a ½ inch. Maybe we have to wait till 1.5 inches.
So, Suzanne, is that in response to the past property tax legislation, or are these cities and counties also thinking, hey, I'm setting my budget, and lawmakers may change things, and things may be different, you know, after we set our budget this year?
The leaders that I've talked to, it's largely been about House File 718,
okay,
the law that's already in effect, because that's what they know. That's what they can use to base their budget planning on right now. However, they've heard the words from legislative leaders that more is likely to come. And they know that Iowans feel like they are paying a lot in property taxes. So they are aware of that. They're keeping track of it. You know, a lot of these mayors or city council members, they are going to the State House to try and talk to lawmakers to say their piece, to say how this is affecting them. And I think they're open to the conversation. The mayor of Pleasant Hill, Sarah Kurowski, has said, could we do a holistic review of the property tax formula and the code? That could take a long time, yeah. And she's aware of that. And I think lawmakers are aware of that too. I think there's unease. That's what I've heard from different leaders across Iowa, is they're just not sure. The prediction that I've heard is if there are more limits placed on what cities and local governments can do with property taxes, it's likely that some projects will be delayed further out, right? Like in a budgeting process, a city or local government, they're not just looking at the next year. I mean, that's really what they're planning for, but they're also planning for the long haul, 5 years, 10 years, right? You might hear the term CIP get thrown around if you go to a city council meeting. You know, that's a capital improvement project, and there's a whole schedule for replacement of equipment, you know, and things that are not cheap. You want to talk about things that you expect your local government to provide, fire truck. So I didn't even know this until recently, that you can buy used fire trucks. They still cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. A new one, depending on the size, could be $750,000. So how, if you, depending on the size of your local government, that's a lot. Like if that truck all of a sudden breaks down and the parts aren't available, like how do you budget around that? So they're really trying to plan, but it may be that truck purchase or an ambulance purchase, that may be kicked down the road a few more years even.
And we know on the other side, we know, you spoke to Iowans for tax relief.
Yes.
And they're saying this is something, though, that needs to be done, that it may be painful, but that it needs to be done. Let's take a listen to what leaders for Iowa Tax Relief have to say.
We're transitioning to property taxes because Iowans are incredibly frustrated about their property tax burden. And our suggestion for this year is a 2% spending cap. The fundamental underlying problem with property taxes is the amount of money that local governments spend.
Okay.
And there, if you want to truly bend the cost curve down, you have to go in to controlling spending.
And Suzanne, Iowans for Tax Relief say they did a poll that proves this is something Iowans want.
They did, and they found that, I believe it was 68 or 69% of Iowans in that poll, which was done by an outside group, done according to, the best professional standards. So this wasn't like an online poll, click here. This was, done scientifically and so forth. But Iowans said yes, they would support a 2% cap on local government's ability to grow property taxes. And I mean, it's right up there on the screen. And that number doesn't surprise me, because who doesn't want to pay less in taxes? But at the same time, I'm not sure, again, that Iowans know what all of their taxes are going for.
Sure. Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, Close Up will continue after this break. We talk about all the things that are going on at the legislature as we get farther into Iowa's legislative session. Stay with us. Welcome back to Close Up. State lawmakers just wrapped up their 6th week of legislative session. They advanced a lot of legislation through subcommittee this past week. That includes House Study Bill 187. That would require every local law enforcement agency in Iowa to participate in federal immigration enforcement. Now, some immigration advocates called this an unfunded mandate that would strain limited law enforcement resources and break trust with the local community. But supporters say this bill is needed to help stop violent criminals who came across the southern border illegally.
It is vital that we have complete cooperation between local, state, and federal authorities as we work to remove these dangerous individuals from our communities and make everyone, immigrant and citizen, safer.
It's another attack on local control and simply will undermine the mission of your local law enforcement officers who are working in their communities every day to build trust and relationships with their community to protect their communities and keep them safe.
Now, earlier this month, a sheriff in Northeast Iowa posted a letter on social media saying his office would not help federal immigration enforcement unless they had warrants written by a judge. Representative Stephen Holt told me that this bill is not related to that. Another bill at the State House would get rid of Iowa's Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. Now, this goes back to 2010. Nearly 63% of voters that year approved the creation of this trust. But it's been 15 years, and lawmakers have never funded it. Senate Republicans are now pitching a constitutional amendment to get rid of the Outdoor Recreation Trust and replace it with a property tax trust fund. That would mean if lawmakers later approve a sales tax increase, the money would go towards lowering property taxes.
Back in 2010, Iowa voters made a clear and resounding statement when they approved the creation of this trust fund.
This may have been voted on in 2010. It is not 2010. The state is not the same. The people are not the same.
Conservationists, parents, lobbyists, and landowners packed into a meeting room at the Iowa State House Wednesday. The room so full, people poured out into the hallway, several holding signs. Some pleaded with lawmakers to keep the Iowa Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund.
The framework is in place to provide significant conservation funding in this state if the legislature will only fund it.
Some say Iowans still want the trust funded to improve quality of life in Iowa.
My kids are not particularly interested in living in a state where they do not have outdoor opportunities.
But supporters of the resolution, which would remove the trust, told lawmakers it's time for change. Farmers who say they're already spending their own money on conservation like the idea of replacing the trust with a property tax trust fund to help bring some relief.
I have 2 boys with me today in high school. I would love to get them involved in farming. I don't know how I'm going to do that when the price of land keeps going up, property taxes keep going up, making it unaffordable for us year and year.
And show some respect.
Democratic Senator Art Stade voted against the resolution.
The Natural Resources and Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund is not just a ballot measure from 2010. It is a vision for a sustainable and prosperous Iowa in the future. A vision we must make a reality.
But Republican senators moved it forward.
And what this resolution does is allows voters to decide on what our priorities should be for our state.
Now, there is a long process to pass a constitutional amendment. This resolution would have to pass through the full House and Senate this year and again next year. And then it would need separate approval from Iowa voters on the 2028 ballot. Another bill advancing at the State House would give parents more control over their kids' social media accounts. Social media companies would have to get parent permission before allowing an Iowan under the age of 18 to create an account. Now, lawmakers moved this bill forward, but say they may need to make some adjustments to make sure that Iowans' personal data is protected. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Have a great day.